The Sabres arrive in Boston making multiple moves prior to Game 6, which could have a major effect on Buffalo's ability to finish out the series on the road. With a 3-2 series lead, those changes out of necessity might not spell trouble for Lindy Ruff, but could be what's needed for a Sabres group who not only look to move on to round 2 before the weekend, but to avoid a potential Game 7 back in Buffalo. Not only could the Sabres rely on familiar faces that have yet to make that playoff impact, but a formidable trio who could step up and be the guiding light for the Sabres to wrap up this first round series. Hello and welcome. My name is Ryan Lee, and welcome to Sabres Digest. All things Buffalo Sabres will be right here in Sabres Digest. Latest news, updates, reactions, and more. So follow along the journey by hitting subscribe down below. We really appreciate it, and thank you so much for watching. So I want to start off with some of the latest updates that came throughout practice, especially when you consider some of the changes in health with Noah Östlund going down in Game 5. And with Östlund going down, someone's going to have to take his spot, especially in that middle six center role. And with the latest updates we got from practice, that could allow a window for Josh Norris to re-enter the fold. From Matt Bove talking about Norris taking the center spot between Benson and Doan, but also Michael Kesselring getting into the mix with Connor Timmins on that bottom two because of Logan Stanley falling ill. That could not just be one, but two potential key players for the Sabres if they want to have a chance to move on. And not only could it be a guy like Josh Norris who is just put in and out due to injury and necessity, but Logan Stanley and what he's been able to do out of the back, the physicality, the size, could be something that is missing. But Michael Kesselring could bring a new wrinkle, a new dynamic that might actually stagnate the Bruins in their own way just because of some curveballs being thrown out there by Lindy, Ruff, and company. And not only are the Sabres in the midst of their playoff run, but the Rochester Americans of the American Hockey League just wrapped up their playoffs, getting eliminated in the Calder Cup tournament. And when you have those guys who are waiting in the wings in Rochester, ready to get their chance in Buffalo, not only is a chance for them to maybe show in the skating and practice that they could be of value to this playoff run, but also if anything else were to come down from the injury pipeline, they would be absolutely the next set of guys to step up. And that is where this tweet from Heather Engel of NHL.com actually comes into the fold with the recent Amerks call-ups, aka your Black Aces from the AHL, that could provide maybe a bit of a spark to the Sabres, maybe not on the playoff game ice, but maybe on the practice rink that could be of use. Guys like Konsta Helenius, who was a point per game in the AHL, also had some games available to him in the NHL. Guys like Radim Murtka and Ryan Johnson, who all have some of that playoff experience in the AHL that could be of use in the Stanley Cup playoff if they were to get their opportunity once again due to injury. And Devin Levi also being a part of that goalie group that could just add more depth if anything were to happen to Luukkonen or Ellis or what have you. But when you have these type of guys waiting in the wings, chomping at the bit, trying to show that they do deserve this opportunity, not just to be called up, but maybe even to get some playing time throughout the playoffs, that could put a lot of pressure on a guy like Josh Norris, who not only reinserts himself back into the lineup because of these lineup changes, but also has some of the intangibles that could be very helpful for the Sabres in the run that they're on right now. Despite missing about half the year due to injury, he still managed a career high in assists this past season. He's also someone who is one of the best face-off men on the Sabres roster that is going to be active, and also the on-ice high-danger shots per 60 is only second to Noah Östlund, which means every time he's on the ice, no one else has created more high-danger opportunities than him and Noah Östlund, which actually could be a relatively seamless fit. We just haven't seen it in a large enough sample size for Norris yet. We saw that immediate impact from Östlund, and that could be a spot for Josh Norris, who was on a heater in April before the regular season ended. And when you consider that Norris is going to be more rested and ready to go, considering he didn't have to play in games 3, 4, or 5, that's a relatively well-rested body who is going to have his moment, whether if it's on the power play, whether if it's on those final minutes trying to kill off the end of the game. Those draws are going to come in handy throughout the entirety of the playoffs because it's a spot where the Sabres, for as long as maybe 10 or so years, have just been really bad in that spot on the face-off dot, and Norris's prowess on the circle could absolutely be of use for the Sabres, especially in situational moments that Lindy Ruff is going to want to take advantage of, especially on the power play, considering that it oftentimes starts with a losing draw and a clear right out of the gate, almost flatlining the power play's momentum before it can even begin. And when you speak about the top unit and the top guys, we've talked about the Rasmus Dahlin quote time and time again. Even though they haven't necessarily been lighting up the scoreboard or producing huge points or huge goal numbers throughout the playoffs, the top unit of Krebs, Tuch, and Thompson have still been one of the more effective lines across the entirety of the NHL playoff field. Currently the third most goals amongst all lines on offense in the playoffs so far. Second best expected goals, most shot attempts, and most that go unimpeded to net. And also they have a 6-0 goal differential when you have Krebs, Thompson, and Tuch on the ice, that top unit. And when you consider that these guys are still producing among some of the best across the entire playoffs, and some people within Western New York are still asking more of them, that's a great sign, because the bar is as high as it can be because of what they've done in the regular season. And it wasn't until right around February or January where those three really started to click. You had Zach Benson up there, you had Doan up there for a bit, you had Oslin up there for a bit. But for Tuch and Thompson, Peyton Krebs has been a really nice compliment to them because he plays to a bit of a different style than either of those two play. The aggressive forechecking, a little bit of precision passing, some of the vision that Peyton Krebs has benefited in this offense, where Peyton Krebs was actually one of only 3 players in NHL history to get a point across his first 4 career playoff games. And when Krebs is performing and Tuch is performing and the whole line is actually executing at a really high level, and you're still asking more of them, that's a good sign, because the chances are there. It's just that they're beating the unpenetrable wall that has been Jeremy Swayman, who was announced a couple days ago that he is a finalist for the Vezina Trophy. And a lot of the maybe ire coming from the Saberhood on this top unit has actually not been from Krebs and Tuch, but has actually been from their Team USA Olympian in Tage Thompson, who is absolutely ready to explode. He's actually found his game in a different form by actually having an assist in games 4 and 5. And that's after a regular season where he was another 40-goal scorer once again. But when you really look at what he's done in respect to the Sabres, in respect to the rest of the playoff field, he's actually been one of the best players on the Sabres. It's just that Jeremy Swayman has been having his number throughout this entire process. You could argue that's Swayman's familiarity with Thompson from the Olympic team. You could argue that that's, in times, Boston just having a 3-man, 4-man wall around Jeremy Swayman, kind of like a soccer set piece, if you will, just forming that wall in front of Jeremy Swayman and making Thompson's life really difficult, especially when you look at the bottom line, the shooting percentage. That is goals per shots on goal. So he is shooting at a ridiculously low pace considering his 5-year average in the regular season from 2021 onward. And part of that is not just because Boston has put extra effort on shutting down Tage Thompson, but also Jeremy Swayman kind of maybe knowing some of Thompson's tendencies just because of division rivalry, the Olympic experience, and what have you. And if Tage Thompson can just take that assist production and turn it into goals, that could absolutely catapult the Sabres into another stratosphere into what their offense can provide, considering that they've been excellent on defense for the last 3 games. In regulation, they've only allowed 1 goal in the last 3 games in regulation. Games 1 and 2, that was its own deal, but games 3, 4, and 5, they have absolutely locked things down. The only issue was that in game 5, Jeremy Swayman kind of goalied that game in favor of the Boston Bruins. But that's game 5 back in Buffalo. Let's move on to game 6 in Boston. It's a spot where, going into it, a lot of people in Boston media were saying, how are the Sabres going to play in TD Garden? How are they going to play on the road? How's the playoff experience? They have the playoff experience. Now they've been getting it as the games progress. And one of the biggest parts of the playoff experience is some daunting road environments, especially at a place like TD Garden, where the Sabres have actually been excellent throughout this entire series. 9 straight goals between games 3 and 4 with a total 9-2 goal differential, severely outshooting them, even having a good edge on the XG. But also all the efforts that the Sabres have been making on the road. We've been seeing some of the quotes from the Sabres just talking about how close they're getting as a unit, how it limits their distractions from everything else within the hockey realm. That has allowed the Sabres to just lock in and focus on the game and nothing else. Right now, they don't have anything holding them back. They don't maybe have that outside pressure of the crowd of KeyBank Center and the party in Canal Side, but they can just focus on what's ahead of them, which is Game 6 in Boston, because they've been really able to produce on the road in these tough environments. And as these games continue to go along, they'll only get better as these series go along. They already dealt with a closeout game. They already acknowledged that's the hardest one to do. And now that they know how difficult it is to close out a series, and even how hard it is to play in a playoff overtime, they have that in their back pocket now. They didn't in Game 5, but they do now going into Game 6. And those are all reasons for optimism because they've been battle tested. They've shown that they can, at the very least, compete at that level. They just didn't execute, and they just couldn't finish the job off. And that is what they could absolutely bring into Boston. I want to end with how the outlook could look for this game, especially because of the implication that they have. Not only a chance to wrap up the series in 6, not only a chance to avoid playing a potential Game 7 next week, whenever that comes, Sunday, Monday, what have you, but also in terms of the overall odds to finish off the entire job and continue to move up along the entirety of the tournament. This is Money Puck's probability meter of every level of the playoff. And even if you look at the Stanley Cup odds in the inner circle or the conference finals right outside of it, the Sabres still have the second best odds, both to make the Eastern Conference final and to be the representative of the East in the actual final itself. And if the Sabres can continue to find a way to manipulate those odds in their favor, either due to the changes that are needed or just due to their overall play, that could not only be a big advantage to Buffalo going into a relatively daunting round 2 against whoever comes out of Montreal or Tampa. Before they get to round 2, they have to close out round 1. And if Norris can make his impact and maybe Tage Thompson can find some of that goal-scoring form that's been missing from him throughout the playoffs, it could be the perfect recipe, the perfect set of puzzle pieces for Lindy Ruff to put together and find the complete picture. And not only could those puzzle pieces be put together for Lindy Ruff to have a better Game 6 compared to Game 5, but maybe even one of the more complete 60-minute performances throughout this entire first round, and might even allow the Sabres to not only go into round 2 with a couple days extra rest with these injuries in mind, but also with extra confidence and extra momentum going into what could be after. But there's still a game to play on Friday, and we'll just have to wait and see. That'll do it for all of us here on Sabres Digest. Thank you so much for watching along. My name is Ryan Lee. Feel free to follow and subscribe down below for all things Buffalo Sabres, your latest news, updates, reactions, and more. And even comment some of your thoughts. I'll be more than happy to read them on the show like I have been all series long. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good one. And as always, go Sabres.